Okay, we're now back for the second part of the PowerPoint presentation. But really quickly, I do want to emphasize that little point I made before. If you're looking at this on YouTube, which you almost certainly are, remember that this little setting thing, you can set the playback speed to 1.5. It's a really good idea. It's actually not a bad idea for the students to do that either, to show them that. If it speeds it up, number one, it's not quite as boring. Number two, it actually engages their concentration a little bit more. When things move fast, your concentration bears down. So I encourage you to do that. So this will be not quite as boring otherwise. So a pre-course survey, and this is done, again, as I mentioned at the end of the last one, in quizzes. But please be aware that quizzes is up in the air. The quizzes that are created in Canvas are either made in the inherent function of quizzes with Canvas, or Canvas is now contracting out with another company called New Quizzes or Quizzes Next, and that doesn't work for surveys. So be aware of that. Surveys are a good idea to engage your students from the beginning, but it might not be around a year from now. So it's a good idea to try it, but don't get too upset if it does go away. But there's a good chance they will learn how to incorporate into the quizzes next. Okay, so what this can do for you, it can give you a sense of the students being able to follow directions. And who are your students this semester? It enables you to convey both online and subject matter information quickly. So the survey is a nice way to kind of get the students in. It also gets them to use some type of functionality in the class. That's important for the technical reasons, but it's also important that the students get an idea that they have to be engaged, but also that they can successfully engage in the class. Many students are very advanced technologically. Many students are not. You will probably have a small handful of students who are very uncertain about their abilities to even be there. And these icebreakers, these surveys, allow them to take a little warm-up lap and show them that they can be successful. Okay? So it's a way where they can learn a new online tool without fear of really getting graded, so there's nothing to lose. If they make a mistake, they can do it again. It's anonymous. It can be. The survey gives a message of what is to be expected of them. In other words, you cannot sit back and just be Chauncey Gardner. You have to do more than just watching. It does not need the text or other content-related materials. In other words, the student doesn't have to read something or prepare something or really understand your subject field before they engage with the survey. So it's a good idea to do, but be aware that it might not be available in a year. And look for an announcement from Michelle or from somebody else involved with Canvas. It's probably going to come from Michelle, whether or not the issue with Canvas quizzes has been resolved. Again, I want to clarify, the quizzes that are available in Canvas are of two types. There's the regular quizzes, and that functionality is going to be gone within the year. Quizzes Next is the new version of quizzes, and that's actually produced by an outside vendor for Canvas. Quizzes Next does not have the survey function. Quizzes does, so we might lose it within a year or so. Just be aware of that. I hope I am proven wrong. I really do hope I'm proven wrong. Okay. The next thing, the kinds of questions you can ask students in a survey. Ask them about their demographics, their background, and things like that, their online experience. That's good to know. Some students really like to chirp up and explain to you and everybody else how they're geniuses. Other students don't have much, and they kind of assess where they are. What their concerns are about the course before it begins, what they might be, anxious about, what they might not be, what they feel confident with. Their VVC experience and their online experience. Be careful with this. You might get an earful of things you don't want to hear. So just give an idea, have them give a brief idea of what their experience is here at VVC. You do not want to open the door to complaining. You want to just have the students state their basic experience. in their online experiences if they've taken courses before, but you don't want to open the door to complaining or settling scores. Related courses that tie into your course, other courses that they've had or that they've already accomplished, what they think an online course is. Most of them will probably give vague answers on this. You want them to compare their conceptions to what the reality is that they're going to be confronted with in your class. You want them to make that comparison so that they can get a bit better idea of what their misconceptions are, because almost all students are going to have misconceptions about online learning. Many will, but they also need to know what you're going to do with them in your class. And it's very important to know, I've had this experience every semester, that I don't teach the online class the way their last teacher does. So they oftentimes have conceptions of online learning based on a previous online class they've had. They've only had one, maybe two, and why aren't you doing it the same as Professor so-and-so? So be aware of that. That should come out in that original survey, okay? And then reporting out to students, showing them what came out in the survey, and your comments on the survey, something like this is going to show up. And I do hope all of our English faculty will take note that this survey was sent out on April 23rd and why that's important, okay? So this is the kind of information that they'll receive and they'll go over. They get an idea of who's in the class. And every class, all teachers know this, every class is different. But you can send this out. And again, it's a harmless activity. In other words, they get an idea of who each is, or who the students are, who their peers are. And it's kind of fun. They can contribute to this, okay? And a famous person was born that day. All English teachers should know that. Now, you do get statistics. In other words, some numerical measurements of what came out of the survey, okay? So you can find those statistics by going into the survey and getting the survey statistics. Again, this is in quizzes, and that'll open up for you, okay? So it'll tell you a little bit about the makeup of your class and how you go about things, okay? The introductory discussion, and I set one of these up where we give a little bit, we say hi. It demonstrates students can use this tool. In other words, it shows them, number one, they should take a survey so that they know how to do a survey and essentially navigate a quiz, but also a discussion where they introduce themselves and they give something, what you did for your summer vacation, essentially. Now, once you get into the class and they need to break down a Shakespearean sonnet, hint, hint, April 23rd, when you actually need to get into the substance of the class, well, they've already done it with their own background information. So that's why an introduce yourself discussion is a good idea. It's a useful thing. But again, I'm not telling you what to do. I'll tell you that it does work well. Okay. And it can be for REC only. In other words, you just want to demonstrate that you're engaging the students. You can give extra credit or credit for it. That is, again, up to you. Or it can be simply who they are to introduce themselves. My name is Dougie. Okay. Remind them not to get too personal. They should know, but you might have somebody who doesn't know. Some students, again, some students will engage in certain types of behavior. We're going to come back to this during the training. Certain types of behavior will come across online, and there might be a psychological issue going on with the student, an anxiety issue, a personality disorder. They might be somewhere on the spectrum or otherwise, and we'll discuss these later on as the training goes on. But you might just remind them not to share too much. They don't want to give out any information that could lead to trouble. But be very explicit about how you want just basic information, what's acceptable, what's not. Okay. And so it includes small content questions. For example, can you name one of Byron's poems? Byron, of course, is a extraordinarily important poet, but name an author who influenced you. They can share something they've read recently. People like to do that. So they like to advertise who they are and what they've read. And who's Aristotle's most famous student? Everybody should know that. Or Seneca's, famous student. Okay, we'll get to that later. So an introductory discussion sample. So this is a sample of what you might see in an introductory discussion. You can grade these discussions, 4 points possible. Now the students know that the discussion is worth something. They have points to go for, okay? To demonstrate your ability to use the Canvas course tool, please post a brief description of yourself. Don't be too personal, describe your educational goals, those kind of things. Introducing themselves. And again, the student, it's essentially a what did you do for your summer vacation issue, where they're not required to do a difficult reading or a challenging reading or a content reading in your field. They can just, generate the content of the post. It's an easy to do, comfortable to do, and they get familiar with the tool. They can make mistakes with it the first time around. They can fumble. They can still get it done and get full credit. And it's a good feeling for the student. It builds confidence in the online environment. Again, you will get a mix of students every semester. There is no real average online. You'll get students who are very capable, students who are not very capable, but they don't want to tell you, students who are capable, but they'll tell you that they're not, and they have confidence issues. You'll get all of them. The discussions sample, the introductory discussion is a good way to get them moving in the right direction. Okay, the syllabus and materials quiz. Now, this is something many instructors do regularly in class, and in our in-person classes. These are usually quite simple and they're pretty short. They essentially allow students to get some points for just doing what they should have done. They remind students of the key things they need to know about the course. And it's a good way to reinforce, not just to ensure that they read the material and consumed it at least at once, but the act of taking the quiz reinforces the things that are important in the syllabus. And again, it demonstrates their ability to use the tool before they're going to be challenged with a difficult reading. It really does break the ice with each other, and it gets them familiar with the Canvas tool. So it gets them going, and the fact that they're going to be engaged in the course through the tools. Okay? And it can be for REC only. Extra credit, again, that's your expertise is used into how you're going to evaluate it. But just know it is a useful way to break the ice in the first week. Another thing is understanding synchronous meetings as opposed to asynchronous. Now, Canvas's Big Blue Button or Zoom, they're both in Canvas, okay? And most of us do have some experience with Zoom one way or another. Many of you use this almost exclusively with your students once you got moved online. And some of you had good success. I've heard that from some teachers. Some of you didn't have much success with it, and I've heard that from teachers. But just know that synchronous means you're simultaneously present, and they can be done throughout the semester. You get to decide how comfortable you are with it and how successful you've been with it and how effective you can be with it. I personally will tell you that I do not use much synchronous interaction because I find it can be intimidating for students I'm trying to reach who can have an anxiety issue or a technical issue. I generally don't do it as much. I know many instructors who use it quite a bit and have been very successful with it. You get to assess your expertise and your comfort level and how you engage the students in synchronous meetings, okay? At the beginning of your course, you might do the following, and these are for you. Put a face to a name for your students. The synchronous interaction, that's what it does very effectively. It puts your face to the course. The students know this is not just a machine. It's an instructor. And enables you to see the students. They're not just an email. So now they're interacting through email and discussions and other things with a person they've seen, they've spoken to, who's responded to them. This is a very powerful tool when the students engage with it. It really is. It can reinforce your key first week concepts and give directions you want them to learn and demonstrate to you. So you can walk them through things, get a feel of as Tracy says, a feel for the room or read the room. You can do that through many of these synchronous tools, the Big Blue Button and Zoom. And it helps the students who are online for the first time. They see they've used a very sophisticated tool. Zoom is, I would say, quite sophisticated, and so is Big Blue Button. For the students, that's a big hurdle. If they can do it, it can really build confidence, okay? So think about how it's going to take part in the first week, okay? Other possible first week activities for REC, and again, I want to emphasize, these are up to you to decide according to what you think will work best. Ask the professor discussion boards where they can just put a question up. And these can be quite interesting. I ran these for years in Blackboard, and you get a real sense of what the students are challenged with. And these are things that you can keep in mind when you design a course semester and then you redesign it the next semester. It's a place where the students can ask what seem like silly questions, but they're things you can take into mind in the design. Students can ask each other questions and work with each other. If you set a good tone, these can be extraordinarily useful if the students really work with each other. One of the things that we've probably learned is that we learn from each other extraordinarily well, people who are in the same challenging position. And if you can get good groups working together, like a student lounge or groups, we're going to talk about groups later on, they can be extraordinarily useful, okay? So question and answer materials, welcome videos from you to them, student tutorials. I'm going to go through examples where the students teach the other students. We do have Pisces and other tools where they can get interaction with actual tutors. But you can have materials where the students demonstrate how to do things. Use your modules to group these and other online activities throughout the course. So your modules put it together in a meaningful way. Okay? And to wrap things up here, the big question is how many and when in the first week. So how much are you going to do? What we have just reviewed in this presentation is far too much for the first week. You will have to use, again, your expertise to go through what you think they can accomplish successfully and engage in the course and introduce themselves to you, and you can introduce yourself to them, okay? So the Distance Education Advisory Committee recommends, this is the DEAC, and I debated this slide, but I think it's useful because it'll provide some guidance for as you go through and set up your classes. For a 6-week or an 8-week or a 12-week, at least one activity during the first Monday through Thursday week. An 8-week course, try to get at least one in to get them moving, get them involved in the course right from the beginning. A 12-week course, it should be a little bit calmer, and you should have a little more time for at least 2 activities in the first week. Okay, for a 16-week course, at least 2 activities in the first week. So think about how you've got the course planned out, and how many weeks you have. And that's generally the DEAC. They've got quite a good deal of experience, and that's how they recommend it, okay? But keep in mind, it is your choice. You know the students, you know your subject matter, you know what works best, both for the subject matter, but also for you and your assessment of the students. It's not a demonstration of keep in mind that students logging in to the course is not a demonstration of regular effective contact. So if you see that Susie logged in, she has not gotten engaged in the class at all yet. If, however, she's engaged in a survey, in a discussion, and introduced herself, well, then Susie's doing a magnificent job, okay? So you can always do activities as you see fit. If you know certain software, certain functions, and certain other things, feel free to use them. They give your class your characteristic, but always be aware that the student needs to learn how to use that function or that software that you're using. And you don't want to turn your English class or your library science class or a counseling class into a software class. So always keep in mind that your tools always have to be learned, but they can engage the students and show that they were involved in the course. Okay, I'll end there. I hope that explains regular effective contact and goes through the core issues. If you have issues, send me a note. But as of now, you understand regular effective contact. Take care.